Hello guys and welcome back to the show. Let's do some quick business here. I'm going to shrink my webcam just a little bit. I haven't done many meaningful videos lately for the reasons that I have been quoting for a while now, meaning being very busy with work and stuff. It's gonna be like that for another 3-4 weeks, and then hopefully after that it's going to be an absolute chess fest, both on the channel, hopefully back on stream. So I'm gonna do a lot of chess related stuff. I'm going to take more coaching sessions. Hopefully we'll be able to upload more coaching sessions. And speaking of coaching sessions, I just finished one with a very long time regular student of mine, a local junior, and I finished this coaching session with a couple of blitz games, which I occasionally do. And I had the black color in this game that I decided to show you because, again, it shows some typical patterns about how weaker/amateur players think. I'm playing the black side of this business, and I'm playing a bit of an offbeat variation, although I have to say that it has become quite popular even on the highest levels of chess. Grishuk, just to name one of the many players who played this system as black, not on a regular basis, but quite a few times. So I thought that I would give it a crack, and came up with this variation here, where black's idea is to allow white to conquer the center rather easily, but then we are going to try to counterattack in the center, especially with the two bishops that are beautifully lined up on the two central white pawns. Now in this position, and already here, in fact, my student was visibly considering the possibility of playing a3. And one of the main reasons why he didn't do it is because he was playing with me, and he knew that I would have given him a lot of grief for that. And in fact, the reason why I would have done it is because it's not good at all, because b4 is actually not a threat. So right now b5 is just a move that supports me to play bishop b7, and yes, of course, later I would like to float the idea of playing b5, but for the time being, it's nothing. You don't need to worry about b4. You just drop the knight back, come around to g3, and again d4 knight is d4 pawn is safely covered. So he played bishop d3, I played bishop b7, and again the worries began, like, ooh, he's attacking my e4 pawn. Well, hang on, it's guarded by 2, so even if the knight gets kicked out, it's still safe. And this is literally how much time you need to invest into, do I care about this business? And you go like, okay, so let's just assume my castle, because that looks by far the most logical move here. If b4, I drop back to e2. Did I get hurt? Not at all. And in fact, the other issue here is that I expanded and extended myself too thin here, because now after knight f6, let's say knight g3 castles, white is going to play c3, and if I have to swap this pawn off, then my whole strategy turned out to be a colossal failure, because my idea as black was to counterattack the center. Have I done anything remotely successful in that department? Not at all. So yeah, there is no need to worry still about b4 here. After castles, black's best is knight d7, and in fact now I would like to attack the center with c5 much rather than with b4, because now white can't play c3, and if they have to take, then after knight c5, now I do have the two attackers on the e4 pawn. So let's just play a null move, and to demonstrate this idea, finally I actually may have a threat of b4, but even here it's questionable, because knight d5 actually blocks off the bishop's diagonal. But now we see that my pieces are piled up, all of them directly or indirectly hitting the e4 pawn. So now it's beginning to make sense how black is playing, but sadly for white, he played knight e2 right away here, which was just way too early. And of course now I don't need to play b4. That was never the plan. The plan was to hit the center with c5. And the situation has already become awkward for white due to the traffic jam as a result of this very passive backward move that wasn't forced at all, because now I'm threatening to win a piece with c4. So white can't just go like, oh, okay, nothing is threatening our castle, because yes, c4 is threatening. And for the same reason he can't push it in. He should have played c3. But again, I might have a variety of ways how I can attack the center. Now I have got knight f6, knight g3, and I may consider now lots of different things. I can just maintain tension by castles, which is probably best, but I can also change the situation in the center by doing d5, e5, and then jump in, which is another classical way of trying to fight for the center. Not quite sure how good it is. Right now, queen e2 seems to be legit, but then again, I have got queen a5 check, and white, yeah, has to make some concession there. But probably my preference here as black would be just simply castle and go from there. And black has got a very, very exciting position to fight for the against the center. Sorry, for. Okay, so knight e2 was played. Sad face. I played c5. And that was the second mistake that my opponent made here, because instead of playing c3, which could have kept the tension and, yeah, quite a bit of play in the position, he played takes. Now this is a very poor swap. This should have never ever happened. This is a colossal change in the position again to my favor, because he swapped off a central for a non-central pawn. Once again, this is one of my all-time repeats that I have said a million times in my videos, that when people do this swap, they think that they swap this pawn for this one. But that's not the case. You need to see what stays on the board and what disappears from the board. This disappeared and this one disappeared. So central for non-central is gone. This one remained on the board. I know that physically it's a different piece of wood from the piece of wood that was standing there before, but the reality is that it just got replaced. So gone for that. Central for non-central, massive favor for black, and at the same time my bishop's diagonal is now fully open and I'm threatening to murder along that diagonal. He had to play here knight g3. Did he have to? No, he didn't have to. He could have played c3. But no matter what he chooses to do now, things are becoming very awkward. I push the bishop back, and after bishop e2, my original intention was to actually take this. After bishop takes, play knight f6, and after pawn e5, either jump in here or here and stand better, or alternatively play knight c6 castles and then bring the knight out, again standing better. But then, at this point, I realized that, hang on for a second, if I play here queen b6, avoiding the queen swap, I deny his castling. His knight on g3 is a pathetic piece that can go nowhere because these are denied and it can't go back. The king can't castle, and the only way to fix up this problem is to put a bishop in e3, which doesn't look realistic at all. So all of a sudden, whilst technically I am development wise I'm still behind, because he has got 3 minor pieces up versus my 2, dynamically my position is way better and functionality of the pieces are way better on my end, because these knights, in particular the g3 one, is really poorly placed. The e2 bishop is really a bystander. The c1 bishop can't really develop sensibly, whereas I have lots of very easy logical moves to come. It's a really, really nasty scenario from white's point of view, because technically you should be ahead, but the reality is that black has got very basic moves that will improve his position, whereas none of that can be seen on white's end. It's very hard to complete development from here on, and actually he collapsed spectacularly in the game, but once again, no blame to him because the position is already very, very hard to hold. He played a4, which is a natural desire to at least try to swap some pieces to ease the pain. But actually, this is another thing that's not going to happen. And to many club player or that level, a4 would mean in their thinking that, oh, okay, so now they do something, no matter what, I'm going to take. They will have to take back with the pawn, and I'm going to take the rook. But again, chess is never like that. Chess is an exact calculating science. Well, it's not really calculating science, but calculation has a huge deal to it. And this is not calculation that I go there, they go somewhere, I take, they take, I will take. This is La La Land, and it happens a lot, actually, not only on club level, but even on higher levels. Because the reality, contrary to this dream scenario, looks like this. I play knight c6, they take my pawn on b5, and I play rook d8. Of course, I play rook d8. When you get here, it's striking obvious that you do. To some, still they would automatically recapture, because that's a very, very common instinct on club level that people can't shake off. The constant retake on everything, whereas rook d8 actually wins the game on the spot, or close to it. Because now the only move is bishop d2, and after a takes b5, the bind on the white army is just something really, really difficult to handle anymore. I still can't castle, pinned, can't move, can move but not really, and I still have a ton of useful moves that I can play. So strategically speaking, white's position is already dead lost. Now the way how it ended was also quite instructive. He played c3. He wanted to deny my knight's squares and do something useful at least, or something that would look useful. But it didn't turn out to be that successful after all. I played knight f6. He went queen c1, knight g4, rook g1, and at this point I was already considering a lot of things that would have won the game either sooner or a little bit later. The number one motive that stands out is knight a5, with the idea of forking the queen and the rook, and it's very difficult to meet. But bishop d1 still holds on. It looks ugly, it is ugly, it allows knight d3, rook d3 penetration, but I didn't see an immediate finish off. And then I thought, I prefer to play chess by my favorite chess rules, which is complete development, bring the last dude to the party, and go from there. And as soon as I played this, I said to him, watch mate, because you will be dead lost here in 2 more moves. He played h3, I expected that, and then bang. The tactics, the icing on the cake, eliminating the bishop, thereby opening up the e3 square for my knight. And yeah, it is just such a beautiful and logical consequence of what happened so far that I didn't, when I got to this stage where I played, castles h3. In fact, when I played castle, I already knew that this knight was never going to move backwards, regardless of what was going to happen in the rest of the game. It can only go forward. And so when h3 happened, I didn't even consider moving this knight at all. I was looking at tactical opportunities, but I knew already that I was going to sack here, because that just looks like the ultimate go-to. And of course, after knight takes d2, knight e3, rook is hanging, pawn is hanging, and knight a5 is incoming, as well as bishop h6 and a lot of other very, very dirty threats. But what happened in the game will demonstrate one of my main ideas even clearer. And that is that after queen d2, rook d8, queen c1, he went back. I jumped in at some point around here-ish. He lost on time, but the beautiful finish of the game would have been something like rook f2, knight a5 now. Knight b3 is absolutely lethal, and the only way to deal with it is to play knight d2, and needless to say that now the second exchange sacrifice, once again without too much hesitation, is going to net the full point. King d2 falls for a spectacular triple fork, and even the more sensible queen takes d2 allows knight b3 when the queen is actually nearly trapped on d2. Its only square on the board is d7, and that allows me to take the rook for free, and all of a sudden I have got 2 pieces for the rook. But that actually is totally unimportant, because the main thing is that the white army is still fully uncoordinated, and I'm threatening with knight c2 check, nearly mating the king, forcing it out to the open, and after b4 simply winning the game. So this was a beautiful rout, and if you are not really convinced, or you are not quite sure how the white position collapsed, I suggest you pause here and you imagine that this was your game. What would you do? Because one has a feeling that we built up a beautiful attacking position, and it could only be spoiled by moving back. And I always tell my students, don't go back ever. Always forward. And of course this is a tiny exaggeration, because every now and then we have to go back. But when we have such an awesome attack, I'm not looking at how to come back. And even if I exhausted every single possibility and I come to the conclusion that after all I have to go back, I still have that second instinct in my head that, but it sucks to go back, let me double check again. And then I go for again every single line that doesn't go back, especially the aggressive ones, and I try to find a way to justify that I need to go forward. And that's it. So once again, queen d2. Knight takes is maybe a touch better, now that I'm looking at it. But even here, after rook here, e5, f5 is probably false, bishop h6. Like, you just look at the board and you go like, oh my god, everything is just so tied down. Rook d8 is incoming. There is a very nasty half pin here. The rook is tied down to the defense of the pawn. This poor dude still can't move. I would hate my life if I had to play a position like this as white. And yeah, luckily I was on the black end of this business. Queen d2, and once again he lost on time somewhere hereabouts. But yeah, he would have been a spectacular finish. And one more thing that I didn't tell you is that if he tries to use the countermeasures, it very rarely works when you are down or behind, that you get to do tactics like that. In this case, it allows a forced mate on the back rank. Once again, because of the atrocious coordination, or rather the lack of the white pieces. Are they developed? Yes, but not meaningfully at all. So yeah, that was it, guys. I hope that it was a bit of an insightful lesson of how I think while my opponent also how he thinks during the same game, and how the two plans and strategies work out against one another. That's all I had for you for now, and as I said, I will be back with videos with rather big gaps here and there for the next 2 to 3 weeks, but after that the chess heaven is going to arrive, so hang on tight. Thank you guys for watching. I will be back with more soon.